Welcome back to Hustle Culture. Today I'm bringing on a guest that's been a great friend of mine here in the Philippines. David is one of those people that you meet that is just extremely smart. He's really forward thinking and he's extremely hardworking. And honestly, he's just a great person to have in your circle. So, David's 25, just a year older than me, but he's accomplished what you would consider to be unbelievable at such an early age with so much more potential. And I mean, he's done it in such a short amount of time, which is also so incredible. So I'm excited to share this episode with David and myself, just running through some questions about his journey and his experiences up to this point in his life so far. So here it is. You're listening to Hustle Culture, a podcast that shows you how to take your hustle to the next level. I'm Jordan Glickman, a 24-year-old homeless entrepreneur who's constantly looking for a better way. Whether it be maximizing work-life balance while trying to reach my first 7 figures, or taking advantage of credit card points and biohacking my way to optimal health and efficiency, I'm all about it. Regardless if you're an entrepreneur or not, I invite you to join me in my journey of constant self-development. Join me and my guest as we deliver real value and actionable steps to embrace and make the most out of your hustle. David, excited to have you on the show with me here today and excited to share your story and some of the experiences you've had with the listeners. In order to start this off and kick things off, would you be able to go ahead and share a little bit about your story, who you are, kind of where you are in your life right now, and then we'll kind of dive a little bit deeper on some of these things.
Sure. So, hey guys, I'm David Abuzowitz, originally from Miami Beach, Florida. I am the COO of Alpha Rock Capital. We are an acquisitions firm that buys Amazon FBA businesses. We bought 8 brands last year, and we are continuing to expand this year. I live here in the Philippines, in Manila, also where Jordan's living right now. And I've had an amazing opportunity to transition from a corporate job to basically running a startup with some of my really good friends. So it's been an amazing experience. Had a lot of difficulties along the way, trying to find the right path. But now I think I'm there, and yeah, couldn't imagine being in a better place at 25 years old. So.
Yeah, I absolutely no excited to. I think your story and what you're doing right now in business is really interesting, especially at the age group that we're both in, 24 and 25. What we're accomplishing at this age is just it's interesting, and I think it's worth sharing. So if you could dive a little bit more in on what your focus is right now and how buying an Amazon business, how does that come about for a 25-year-old person, making acquisitions of companies and kind of being in that field of M&A. How does that work for you?
Yeah, so I mean, we're super non-traditional, more or less. Like I have the most finance background in the group, like traditionally at least. I have a degree in finance and another one in economics. But yeah, I kind of stumbled into this world by accident. So my first job ever, I was a technology consultant for IBM, basically going and implementing their Watson AI systems at Fortune 500 companies. For a first job, it's pretty great, and yeah, I just wasn't happy there. I kind of wanted to do my own thing. Everything felt too slow, and so I really wanted to go on this entrepreneur life. And thankfully, I knew some guys from my college days that they kind of jumped into this life, and they ended up offering me a job out here in the Philippines. I came for that job. I left shortly after due to wanting to do something else. It was like a photography studio, which wasn't quite down my alley, but it was a really good jump start into this life. Met some guys out here in the Philippines who had just bought their first Amazon business and then their second one shortly before I joined them. And then we just started running those businesses, met some people along the way, raised some money, use that money to buy Amazon businesses. Our target range is under $1 million. So these aren't massive companies, but they're definitely brands that are doing pretty nice sales on Amazon in the 6 figures each. And yeah, I mean, we all just stumbled onto this life completely by accident, which is sometimes how the best things happen, just by saying yes to an opportunity.
Yeah, I find that so cool and so interesting. You started out, without the purpose of purely driving for necessarily not necessarily specifically money or anything like that, or wanting to start a business and stuff, but along a few steps and pieces of your journey, you've kind of pulled yourself into being somewhat of an entrepreneur and taking big risks that have ultimately led to really big rewards for yourself. So I commend you for that, and I think it's really, really cool and interesting. I think with that though, because I can agree with myself, that a lot of like what's happened even in my life, it's all been unexpected. It's all just things came about. You're working hard, you're in the right place at the right time, and that consistency of hard work just kind of gets you to that next step, regardless if you planned for it exactly or not. So with that said, you didn't plan on buying businesses, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Amazon FBA businesses specifically. So what do you think is your purpose now, and how do you think that's changed maybe in the past 5 years? Your purpose and the reason why you're doing all of this. Because I think, of course, we're all driven by money to some extent. But what do you think is that greater kind of drive for yourself now, and how do you think that has changed from where you first were in a really good job, and you were maybe driven by something different?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I was an artificial intelligence implementation consultant for IBM. And while that's a really good job, it required a really tough schedule that it can be demoralizing to a lot of people. Like I was up Monday mornings, 3:30, 4 a.m., and headed to the airport by 5 a.m. to jump on a flight to the client site wherever it was that week. And just I spent so much of my time on planes and just sitting in client offices where um, I've mentioned this pretty frequently. I think it's one of the major factors that drove me to hate that lifestyle. But like when you're working at a client site, they put you in the worst offices. So we're in windowless conference rooms where you can't tell that the time is passing, besides that it's ticking away on your computer. So while the job may look really nice from the outside, or even like glamorous, if you think flying around is awesome, I did get to see some different places, but overall, I mean that didn't motivate me at all. And one of the biggest things in my life at that time was I had just started trying to figure out how to be more productive, and one of the things that I did was time tracking. And so I would basically create categories of different things, whether it was time spent traveling to and from work, time spent working on actual work or XYZ project on the weekends, or whatever it would be, time spent watching TV. Um, and so I would look at where I was allocating time in my life, because time for me is one of the most important factors. I don't want to spend a lot of time doing things that I don't like, and I want to spend as much time as possible doing things that are really going to benefit me through the rest of my life, and drive me to be better. And so, I started looking at the reports from my time tracking app, and I saw how much time I was spending traveling, just getting to and from work, all the plane rides, all the time in the car going to the job site, like all of these things. And I just realized like that's dead time. That's time that I'm never going to get back. Um, Same thing at work, like the amount of time that I was actually working, but like separately from the time that I just kind of had to be there in the seat. It was just crazy, and I couldn't stand the idea that I was wasting so much time of my life doing something that didn't exactly make me happy. So yeah, I mean, as you said, consistency is one of the most important things. And so when I jumped into this entrepreneurship life, like I jumped into something that was the first opportunity that came across that really catapulted me into this life, but it wasn't what I wanted still. And I could see that in my time. I could see that I spent a good amount of time working, like more than most people work, probably like 10 hours, 8 to 10 hours a day, every single day, including weekends. Um, but it didn't really drive me. And now I know that I'm happy doing what I do, because the first thought when I wake up every morning is like, I want to go sit at my computer and see what our sales are, how we've done overnight, things like that. And it really just drives me. And I've actually kind of dropped the time tracking, especially now during the coronavirus period where I don't have to go anywhere, because I know
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I just sit at my computer all day long and work until I can't work anymore. And then when I can't work anymore, maybe go take a little bit of a break and do something else, play with the dog, or watch some TV, something like that. But that's really what drove me to where I am. I'm not going to say that's the only thing. Of course, I had some amazing opportunities come along the way, and all of that. But the drive to keep going and really find what I wanted to do and what made me happy. That was definitely a good part of it.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good reason. I know for myself, when I was 15, 16, something that always drove me for like lifting harder or just getting better at whatever the things I was putting my time and effort into was I really just like, I think very early on, I grasped the concept that you've got one life and you've truly got to make the most of it because, you know, in each phase of your life, you've only got that much time to be able to do those certain things. You know, if you're too old, you can't travel certain places, and you're too young, you can't do X, Y. So I grasped that really early on, and I think a lot of people weren't didn't align with it as much. And they were like, "You have plenty of time. Life is long." But I think in reality, like life's short, and you truly have to make the most of it, like every single day. And like once you truly grasp that, like it really changes your motivation and push inevitably.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look at each of my years now, and I'm amazed that I've been doing this for 2 years now, basically. Like, it really feels like it hasn't even been a year. Time has absolutely flown, and part of it's that, we are doing something that we really enjoy doing. I think a
Yeah.
lot of the people think life is so long sometimes that it draws out because they're spending so much time doing things they don't like. But when
Yeah.
you're really doing what you love, like whether it's traveling, whether it's working, whatever it is, like time really does seem to fly, and we don't have that long. Like, I came out here when I was 23, and now all of a sudden I just turned 25 last month. I'm like, oh man, where'd the time go? I'm already like counting down till my 30th birthday. Like, what can I get accomplished before then?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I feel similar. I turned 25 in 2 months, so I'm right behind you. It's a crazy feeling, but it opens your eyes and keeps you on your toes, to say the least.
Absolutely.
So, with all that you've done, you know, you're clearly, you know, you're doing big things and whatnot. To from your perspective, what are the skills that have you've found to be most beneficial to you so far, and how did you come across them? Because you know, if you look at a 25-year-old acquiring businesses, analyzing them financially, being able to grow them, scale them, lead a team, you know, these are some pretty big skill sets, which maybe to yourself and myself, they're not like, whoa, holy cow, especially now that you're doing it. But they certainly are. They're no small feat. So how did you develop these skills ultimately?
Yeah, so I mean, number one for me, especially in the work that I'm doing, is like attention to detail. Um, so right now I'm managing like 8 different brands, and we have 117 SKUs under our company, which is quite a few. And so I really have to know every detail of what's going on in the business at all times. I need to know exactly where our containers are at sea, when they're expected to be into our warehouse, when the shipments from our warehouse are expected to hit Amazon, and just like knowing every little detail about what's going on in the business. Because if you drop the ball once, it could cost you thousands of dollars. And so, yeah, attention to detail. I try to make that my number one skill, and I'll always do my best to focus on my work. The one thing
Yeah.
that I never want to do is just mindlessly be doing work and clicking buttons. Like, if I ever hit that stage, I'd take a little break, take a walk, do something else for a little bit, and then come back to it. Because one slip of focus can really cost you a lot of money. And then the other one is really just never stop moving, right? Like, you can get discouraged, life can kick you and put you down at different points, but like, you just have to keep standing up and keep going, because if you don't, then that's when life will really just start passing you by. I was in positions that I didn't like, and while I didn't take any first opportunity that I could to get out of them, like for example, I could have gone to just change jobs to a different corporate job. I realized very quickly that wouldn't make me happy. So it's about seeing the right opportunities and not being afraid to take them, and
Yeah.
setting yourself up in life to be able to take them. Like, financially, I was in a very good place because of the way I had managed my finances, that I could come. I took a 2/3 pay cut basically to come to the Philippines from my job in New York, and I had set up my finances in such a way that I could really take this risk because it was something I wanted to do. So, I mean, taking risks as they come by, but taking them in a smart way that's the one of the number one things in life for me. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, speaking on that, I think a lot of it just comes from experience, just jumping into it, especially with entrepreneurship, you know, like attention to detail is an indefinite skill, but it just comes from one of those characteristics you have, and then really just the experience of like learning everything else along the way. Like even the agency that I've started, I didn't know half of the stuff I was even selling probably in the first 6 months or year. I was just outsourcing contractors or leveraging someone else to do the work, but learned it along the way, and just that attention to detail for myself is what allowed me to pick it up. But I want to ask you, I guess, one more in-depth question on this, and it's a little bit a selfish question because I'm right now looking to acquire a business or two, which we can talk about a little bit later, off the show probably. But how did you come up with these skill sets? Because there's so many involved and there's so many things to learn about when you're trying to acquire a business. How did you learn about all the different things that you need to analyze in a business? Was it just kind of Google and YouTube? Was it from history in school? What was it that allowed you to be able to understand how to value businesses, how to acquire them, what to look for, what's a red flag? I mean, not just the big details, but even the small ones as well, especially for Amazon.
There's a whole bunch of ways to learn all this information, and it's never going to be one single way, especially like in an industry that we're in that's very non-traditional.
Yeah.
So a lot of it I learned just by meeting someone. I think this happens to me a lot in life, and I'm sure it happens to a lot of people, where you meet someone and they tell you something that then sparks an interest in you and leads you to learn more about it. So in this case, I met one of my co-founders, Mark Roca, and he had told me like you can buy Amazon businesses, and I was like, wow, I had no idea. Like I thought these were just people selling things online, and that was that. I didn't realize that there was a market for buying and selling,
Yeah.
and all of that. So Mark had bought his first two businesses already, or his first business when I met him, and then another one a few months later before I joined up with him. But yeah, Mark opened my eyes to the opportunity that existed in buying businesses, and then that sparked my interest from there. And I'm huge in being self-taught. Like I really believe that with the resources we have today on the internet, you can learn anything that you want to learn. So whether it was how to run a business, like anytime I had a question about how to run the Amazon businesses, I kind of got dropped in the deep end. Mark's like, here's a business, run it. Here's how you send a shipment to Amazon. That was the only thing he taught me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say the only thing he taught me, but that was the first main thing he taught me. And then he's like, all right, figure it out.
Yeah.
And so, I started doing a lot of Googling, watching YouTube videos, like trying to talk to other Amazon sellers about how they do things. They're a pretty secretive bunch, so but you can definitely learn. But I mean, it's a combination. You've got to meet a person that sparks your interest, start learning more yourself before you get to the level of being able to talk to people who already do it. And once you can do that, I mean, it's truly incredible. I'm part of some groups that have people on like the cutting edge of Amazon, people that work with like their beta programs that are testing out new features that other people won't get for another 6 months, things like that. So yeah, learning about how to run like Amazon businesses, it's a combination of self-teaching and talking to other people. As far as the M&A side of it, that's a little bit different. I mean, I do have some traditional background in that, finance and economics. In finance, like we learn how to value companies, we learn how to look at their financial documents, do things of that nature. So it definitely helped a lot in seeing the exact things to look for in an Amazon business. It was all about learning how the business worked and then targeting the things that were the most important first and seeing where other people messed up. So for us, like number one thing that people mess up on all the time, that's the easiest to fix is inventory, whether it's
Yeah.
ordering too little and running out of stock or too much and just racking up storage fees. I mean, that's one of the first things we look for when we look at a business to acquire. So yeah, it's a little combination of everything, and just being interested in what you're doing makes you want to learn more about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect answer, and I think it's one I can totally resonate with. The fact that it's not just, being taught by somebody. I think that in all the things that I've learned, whether it was my training business or what I do now, I certainly wasn't taught directly from one person. And it's always, I think you said it spot on. You hear something from someone like, hey, there's a marketplace for X, and you're like, oh, and then you start to connect these dots that, well, if I can make this purchase, then I just need to learn a little bit more about what specifically am I analyzing on Amazon. And you pull together these different kind of resources or things that you already know or don't know, and go from there. So I think that that's such a spot on thing for especially younger entrepreneurs that are trying to figure out how to get to that next step, what it is they need to learn. I think it's really just a big part of it is networking and interacting with other people, honestly, that are in the same field or are further than them in life or experience, whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. I've never been the kind of person to have like a specific mentor per se, but I will say, like, whenever I go into a conversation with somebody, if I can gather that they know even a little bit more than me about any topic that I'm interested in, like, I take whatever they say and I try to learn from it. So it's about really just putting together all the information you can from as many sources as you can get it from to create your outlook on anything in life, whether it's running a business or the stock market or anything of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, this next question's a little bit simpler, but I think if you can give an example of an exact struggle, I think that that's something that I want the audience to be able to relate to, that not just a 25-year-old that's, made $1 million or whatever it may be. It's just all simple and stuff. I want them to also be able to resonate with not only that there are monster struggles and have to genuinely overcome them, and ones that they might be able to resonate with, because I think one of the things I find with talking with people that are way ahead in life is they make it all simple, or seem simple at least, on how they got from X to Y. And I certainly know that it was never simple for any of the ones, the people that I have met that are quite far along. So what are some early business struggles, and how did you overcome them? And you can just give one example of one that might be really memorable for you and what it was that you did to overcome it. And it may just be a simple answer, but yeah, go ahead.
I mean, the question itself may sound simple, but I really don't think that's the case. I mean, picking one out of all of the pitfalls that happen when you first start a business or when you first do something so new that you're really just trying to find your legs and stand. I don't
For
think
sure.
that's an easy thing to do at all. Like from the very beginning, there have always been struggles. I mean, finding with starting a business, I mean, finding the right people, that's a huge struggle, right? Like whether it's the people that you start the business with, figuring out what you're good at and what each person should tackle, figuring out how to delegate. Like there were times where I ran myself ragged because I was just trying to do everything and I had no idea how to delegate.
Yeah.
I mean, there were times where I had to go to the office at 2 in the morning after being out with friends because something happened and I had to fix it right then and there. So, I mean, I think it's almost impossible to pick out a single one, whether it's for best things or worst things. I mean, there's so many things that happen every day. Every day is a new challenge that
Yeah.
it really is something that continues to evolve. It's not all easy. It's not all glamorous, especially running your own business. Like you feel every single hit that you take. And sometimes it makes it even hard to enjoy your victories because you just know that there's so much more to be done.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's easy to pick a best or a worst moment in any sort of business. We all have our struggles, and of course, we want to talk about all the positive things, but it's not always easy.
Absolutely. I think to kind of clear that up, even just for the audience, I think the one thing, at least from my side, and correct me if I'm wrong, but overcoming those struggles is really just about pushing through it. It's about the grit. And like you said, you were out late one night and you had to go into the office at 2 a.m. And I've certainly had plenty of things like that where I'm in the middle of a gathering or whatever it may be, and I've got to drop everything, get that computer, and whether it's answer a client or fix something, whatever it may be, it's just about getting after it, and you just it's self teaching and self figuring it out half the time.
Yeah, it's like I said before. Like life is going to try to kick you down. That's just what happens. Entropy, But it's just about getting back up and pushing through any obstacles you encounter. Because I mean, the moment that you stop pushing through, the moment that you say you're done, you probably really are done. And I mean,
Yeah,
that just makes it 100 times worse.
absolutely. So with that said, mentioning that you have had to go to the office at 2 a.m. and just to get on work when you wouldn't expect it, how do you manage your work and home life kind of balance? Because I even for myself, it's I will try to take certain days or times off, but there's always something that you just don't expect. It comes up, and if you don't get to it right then, there are relatively severe consequences. Or even for myself in the beginning, I just didn't want to stop working until I got to a certain point, quote unquote. So How do you do that for yourself? And was there a certain time in your life where you really started to have a better work-life balance? I know my first year in business, like it was horrible. I mean, I literally worked probably 80 hours a week easy without question. Because, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll be honest. I don't I don't balance it. It's not a balancing act so much as a managing act, not letting yourself go too far in.
Yep.
My thing is really, if you have something to get done, even if it can be done tomorrow, just do it today if you have the time, if you have the energy.
Yeah.
I try to work as much as I can whenever I can, but the important part isn't saying I want to have a 50-50 or 80-20 work life balance. The important thing is making time for the important things. So whether it's like when you know that you have something that you want to do, like meeting your girlfriend's parents, I did that last week. Her mom, her sister, family came over for lunch. I set aside that time. Like I work Saturdays almost all the time, and I was just like, this is important to me, so I'm gonna make the time for it. So it's not about just saying like I want to work 80% of the time and relax 20% of the time. It's like these are the days where I'm gonna have something to do for relaxing, and that counts as my time. But
Yeah.
then, when you have to work, you have to work, which is you should just if especially if you're the one running the business, you got to work as much as you
Yeah.
can until it gets to a point where you can delegate everything. I think that point is somewhere in my future. It's definitely not now. I'm still very much of the opinion that even if you're the business owner and if something happens, you need to get down and dirty and fix it. Like you can be the one in the trenches with your employees trying to do whatever it is. You should, like, no one is above work, even the CEO of a company. So it's it's one of those things like as your business develops, yes, maybe there are times where you can delegate work to other people and oversee it from a purely managerial aspect. But I mean, for us, even that time's not there. When you're in the massive growth stages, that's not the time. I think when that time comes, the business is very well developed, and it is probably slowing down in growth. And that's not a place that I've found myself yet, and who knows when we'll get there. But you know,
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And it's again similar for myself, where I don't just take Saturday and Sunday off every week. It's probably farthest from the truth if I ever said I did that. Because I work Saturdays and Sundays. I just may not have that much to do on a Sunday. But in reality, maybe I'm just looking at for what the next product development is or whatever. I'm still in some way working. I just may not be working, as aggressively as a Monday morning. Um, but yeah, I couldn't agree more.
I mean, there are times where you can just lay on the couch and think about what you want to do next, and maybe you're not sitting there, at your computer doing something, but sometimes you can have the best ideas when you're doing that. So it's really just, for any business owner, I'm sure their business is almost always on their mind. And, it's just about making the times for the important things outside of business, and making sure that you can do those.
Yeah,
Because otherwise, like, I mean, if you miss the important things in your personal life, then things can go really wrong in your head. That's for sure.
definitely. So, speaking of a business owner, what would you say your responsibilities as a business owner are? Whether it's today's business owner or it's what you see yourself being in 3 years? Because I think one of the things I know when I first started out is I didn't fully grasp the concept of the owner, and I didn't really understand that it's completely different than being the CEO, and it's completely different than being the COO. So, what do you see the actual business owner? Where you're a little bit more removed from the business, what do you see the actual responsibilities of that actually being?
Mm, as a business owner, I mean, what you really want is you want that long term vision. A COO is figuring out what needs to be done today, next month, and for the next couple of years. A CEO, I mean, I guess that is also what they do, is they do long term strategy, and as a business owner, that's the same thing. So I mean, what you really want is just to see the business grow, and being an owner is important, because you have skin in the game. For us, like, anyone in management on our team has skin in the game. They've put some of their own capital in the business. It's not It's not money that we've paid them out of the business that they exchange for shares. It's not none of that. Like they've taken money that they had before coming in and they've put it into our business. And that effect is it's incredible. I mean, you know that your money's on the line, that your livelihood is on the line. When you look at these big companies that have COOs that get paid out in like stock options and things like that, I mean, it can allow them to prioritize short-term growth over the long-term growth, and that's not what you want. We look at our business 10 years down the line. I mean, the horizon for acquisition of Amazon businesses, we see it as like 5 to 10 years maybe before you get a lot of players doing exactly what we're doing. I mean, we're already seeing a few pop up, but it's still definitely in the early stages. But for us, it's all about prioritizing long-term growth. I mean, we already know if we find something more profitable than this, we can move to that. We can figure out a way to incorporate that. So it's really having just an overview of the business and having skin in the game is super important. It just makes you want to work that much harder.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's a great answer. So I'll move us quickly into a fire round here before we wrap things up. So you probably don't know what these 3 questions are because I didn't send them over to you. I know some of your answers already, but I think that the reason I'm asking them for you specifically is I think that you do have some really interesting answers for them. So try to keep them short if it's possible, but we'll try to just blast through these 3 and then we'll wrap things up here. So the first question is, if everything restarted tomorrow and Alpha Rock was completely gone, but you could retain all the knowledge that you have today, what would be your backup plan? What is it that you start doing tomorrow?
It's yeah, I won't make it too long, but I do the exact same thing that we're doing right now. Of anything that I've ever seen, it's the most profitable thing I've ever seen per dollar invested. Yeah. It's really fun to do. And I mean, if I had no capital, I would go advise someone else who's doing the exact same thing because I mean, there's this industry is growing like crazy.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to follow that up with as not part of the fire round, but for the audience that is like, okay, well, how do you then start this same business where you acquire businesses, but you don't have, say, $1 million cash? There's tons of ways to leverage other people's capital. And David, if you want to speak on that really quickly, just like how that would be possible, I think that that's also interesting because I think younger entrepreneurs, they don't understand that you can leverage other people's capital, leverage their time, and still do some of these incredible businesses like your own if they just have, again, the grit, the understanding, the know-how on how they're going to execute, build, and scale, and so on. So if you want to speak on that really quickly, I think that's really interesting as well.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, assuming you have no money, first off, there's 2 ways to go about this. Number one is you could build something by using other people's capital as a business. So that's basically our structure. We're structured not as a fund like an LLP. We're structured as a C corp. And so basically, we're just a business. We are not technically a fund, although we may operate with some of those things in mind. We file paperwork with the SEC all the time, things like that. But yeah, so there's absolutely a way to leverage other people's capital. So if you're putting it all into a business, I mean, maybe it starts slowly. You get someone that says, okay, I have $25,000 to invest in this Amazon business. You find 1 or 2 SKUs that you really like, and you take it from there. The other way is to just kind of be a consultant, right? I know tons of these people. One of the most famous ones is Ace Chapman. His thing is, I'll go buy a business for you and I'll teach you how to run it. There's tons of people nowadays that are looking for passive income. We're actually looking at selling one of our businesses to buy a new one. And I was just talking to these people yesterday. I mean, they're real estate investors, but they see e-commerce is coming up and they're like, okay, we want to get in the Amazon game. We want to start buying e-commerce businesses because we see this industry is exploding. So if you know how an Amazon business works, you can go to them and say, okay, I'll help you look through all of the Amazon businesses that come out. And there's, I mean, just on one marketplace, 30 plus for sale every week. And you can say, okay, I'll help you find the right Amazon business for you. I'll teach you how to run it, or I'll teach someone how to run it for you. And, just give me a cut of the profits that I make you. Because once again, that's skin in the game, right? I really hate when people charge based on revenue because it just means that they want to pump up the numbers. It doesn't matter about the profit. Like, just say, I don't make money unless you make money, right?
Yep. Oh, I think that's great. That's exactly what we've started doing with our marketing now. Now that we can put our money where our mouth is, we ask for a very small base fee just to cover a few expenses, but then the rest is based off of the actual revenue generated. or for some clients, it's the net profit. So yeah, I think that's awesome. So the next question is, and I think that you have a really interesting answer to this that you had told me probably a year ago now, is what monetary goal do you have personally, and why do you want to make that much money?
Oh man. I mean, I'm sure even since I told you this, like it's changed, but um I mean, $1 million, let's say, 10, 20 years ago is not what it is today.
Of course.
Inflation's always going up. The price of things is always going up. It's crazy, but yeah, I mean, the goal. I have different financial goals. My goal is 1 million sometime in the next year as a net worth, and then hopefully at least 5 times that by 30. Hopefully a little bit more, but I mean, it really depends on how much you're working, and those are like very concrete financial goals. But the numbers themselves don't mean anything. What I'm really looking for is I want to be in a position where I don't have to work another day in my life if I don't want to, and I'm the kind of person that's always going to want to. I think even if I was, just like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, all those guys, they're insanely rich, but the idea that they're not going to continue working to them would be crazy. Like there's so much that they want to accomplish. So financially, I want to be in a position where I don't have to work another day in my life if I don't want to, but I'm always going to want to, and I'm always going to want to do more because in this world, there's so much to get done. And we need so many more entrepreneurs doing amazing new things and developing new industries. So,
Absolutely. I think just to, I don't know if this will refresh your memory, but you had mentioned, I believe, a goal, and I could be wrong about the number, but I think it was maybe 500 million, either in capital or net worth. I'm not really certain anymore. But then to pair with that, it was what you wanted to do with it, which I think was something to do with, I think along the lines of investing into some kind of medicine, and I think also something with space as well, if that jogs your memory.
yeah, I mean, as I said, there's always more things to be done in this world. So, just earning money to earn money, it doesn't make sense to me, right? Like,
Of course.
getting a stable financial future, that's great. But if you have excessive amounts of money in the 8, 9, 10 figures, like you should do something with it. Sitting on a pile of cash just doesn't make sense. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm passionate about that I'd love to contribute to. I mean, there's technologies like CRISPR, for example. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, Jordan, but it stands for clustered regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats. And essentially, what it is a gene editing technique that we find in nature in bacteriophages that basically go and edit their genes in order to fight off bacteria and to not die. And so we are now using this. We discovered this technique, I think, in 2012. It wasn't that long ago. And at the beginning, it didn't even get that much funding. Like someone getting 6 figures, 100,000, $500,000 to the research institutes that are researching this. Like that was a lot of money for them. So to be able to fund like that kind of research that has the potential to change humanity in the future, yeah, if I had a ton of money, like that's one of the things that I'd like to do. Right now, something that's like that is like brain imaging techniques. I mean, from 2005 to 2015, we learned 100 times more about the brain than we knew at that point. And with better imaging techniques, it's continuing to get better at an exponential rate. So I know there's like a brain institute that their total budget per year is like $500,000. So to be able to give that amount of money to one of those institutes to really like fund their research and help that exponential growth in these fields that have the ability to cure tons and tons of different debilitating diseases that humans have, whether it's brain diseases, heart disease, or like aging itself. I think that would be really awesome. Another thing I'm really passionate about is space. There's a lot being done in like the launch industry right now by Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, but that's really just the beginning of space. Like
Yeah.
every year there's habitation pod building uh, competition where these people are challenged to take the resources that they would have on Mars and to build habitation pods out of the resources that we find in situ or on Mars already. Same thing for the moon. And so like these companies, I mean, they get funding from NASA, different programs for less than $1 million. So I mean, if you have $500 million, let's say, to be able to fund some of these companies that could do incredible things for humanity in the future is well within your reach. So yeah, I mean, these are just some of the things that I think about, and once I get to the point that I would have that kind of capital, I'm sure things will change. But they're things I love to keep up with, so there'll always be new things that you can help push along scientifically, at least.
Yeah, and that's what I find like really interesting about, even what we talked about before with your purpose and your why. This relates back to your long-term purpose and the reason you're doing what you're doing. It's not just again about the money. I mean, the money is part of it, but it's been about the long-term play. And I think it also kind of relates to what we were talking about earlier as well, where it's, now that I'm talking to you about, CRISPR and these other things, it's like, whoa, I didn't even know that's something I could invest into. And it might be something that interests me and piques my interest. And whether it's something that I want to invest into in 5 years or 20 years when I have the same amount of capital, or it's even just something I want to somewhat be involved in right now. Like, again, it kind of goes again back to just networking and a lot of these things we've even talked about in the beginning. So I find that as a perfect example of, again, just creating that communication, that network. It just gets you farther and farther in all the things that you're doing, or recrafting your purpose and driving you for what you're trying to do. So
Absolutely, and just to throw one more thing in there, like I'm sure some of my ideas may sound a little grandiose to some, but it doesn't even need to be that level. I mean, one of my really good friends is a lawyer who's not much older than me, early 30s, but has done quite well for herself. And she grew up playing basketball with inner city kids and chooses to help give back, both her money and her time to elementary schools where underprivileged kids, like the giving back to the basketball associations. And it's truly amazing the difference that you can make in people's lives with even a small amount of money. Just imagine giving that to a basketball association and having kids grow up to play professional ball. I mean, so it doesn't have to be something crazy and scientific and a massive undertaking. Like even small amounts of money can change people's lives, and that's what I believe people should do with it. Once they have financial stability, do something that matters to you, do something important. So if basketball is your passion, then give back to kids who love to play. I mean, it can be anything, big or small, but do something with it. Have a
yeah,
have
no,
a
I love
purpose
that.
other than just gaining money, because that's what's
Yeah,
going to keep you going every day.
yeah, no, I love that. That's great. All right, and so the last question on this fire round is two ways that you would invest $100,000 capital, assuming that you have maybe only a quarter million, so it's about half of what you have saved up. One can be what you're doing now, that's fine, but what would be the second thing that you would invest 100K cash into? Again, to take you from that six-figure mark to that seven-figure mark. Like, I think that's it's a question I had for myself a few months back. So yeah, love your thoughts on that.
I mean, as I said, what we're doing has a massive calculated return. So yeah, I'd absolutely invest in that. Something else. I mean, the way to get the best return on your money, it's not the stock market, that's for sure. When we look at stocks, like on an average, maybe you get 7% a year. If you're looking at the S&P over a long period of time, hedge funds don't do that much better. Actively managed funds don't do that much better. So absolutely avoid the stock market. If it were 10, 15 years ago, I'd say put that money in Bitcoin, absolutely. But the whole crypto space, I mean, it's either matured or overinflated or just so rapidly changing that if you're risk averse at all, I would not put a bulk of money there. If you're going to do something with that quantity of money, I really do believe that it's in startup business. Whether it's starting your own or investing in a friend's, investing in someone that you know, there's always going to be someone doing something that needs money to get a little further. And like for us, our minimum investment is it was originally 10,000, now it's like 25. But I mean that even that small amount of capital can provide massive returns for us. And in any startup is where you're going to get the best returns. Now, you also have the chance of going completely broke, but that's up to you and your due diligence process of finding a company that is at some level of maturity that won't immediately go blow your money and go broke.
Yeah.
But so yeah, if I had that amount of money and I could invest it in my own company, I know tons of people in the startup space now, and I'd find a project that I really like and get fully behind that. There's new softwares that are being developed every day to do a variety of things and making a ton of money. I mean, look where Zoom is now with all this crazy pandemic stuff going on. So, yeah, I definitely look in the private the private equity space. And I don't mean a private equity fund, but just privately funding a company.
Yeah. And I think the reason I asked that is like when I made my first $100,000 in cash, it was like, oh, this is really cool. But now what do I do? Because like when getting to that first 100,000, it's not that it's hard. But then getting to the second 100,000 is quite easy. But getting to that first million is going to be hard. But then the second million should be, in theory, as easier. So it's again, it's just leveraging the capital you have. And so I think just getting different people's perspectives on what they are doing or what they're going to do is interesting. And I think my bit of advice for myself and the audience and whatever is really just getting behind, investing your own capital as you leverage it along the way into things that you have more control over. And that's why I haven't been as big on the stock market and stuff. Not that you can't plan it out and stuff, but I'd rather put it behind a business that I'm in behind or that I'm at least consulting on or something like that, because I have a direct result on what's happening to that business and ultimately my investment.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't go blow it on a Lambo.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't buy depreciating assets.
Exactly. Yeah. Not until you're, good 40 years old or you've got that complete financial freedom, and then I guess do what you want if that floats your boat. All right. And so 2 last questions here and then we'll wrap things up. So do you have any books or podcasts that off the top of your head, or even YouTube channels that you would suggest people to consume, whether it's for business or not? I know that you listen to and take in a lot of information from a few different sources. And I've listened to a few of them myself and found them really interesting. So if you'd be willing to share, I think that would be cool.
Yeah. So, one of the first things that got me on the productivity and entrepreneurship journey is absolutely Cortex. It's this podcast by CGP Grey. He does a lot of like informational videos on YouTube and then moves into podcasting. It's super nerdy. Like, I'm gonna give everyone a forewarning, super duper nerdy. But the beginning is them just discussing how to optimize your system for email, how to optimize your time tracking, how to optimize your calendars, things like that. Just getting the most out of your time by using these different systems for productivity. So, I really like that one, but as I said, I'm going to warn people, it's super nerdy. The jokes are a little ridiculous. They're all like tech jokes. So maybe not everyone's cup of tea, but I really enjoy it. Apart from that, I love watching just things that provide you general information. So CGP's Gray's videos, a lot of them are like how the world works, things coming in the future. The one that you might know best would be Humans Need Not Apply, which basically describes how artificial intelligence is going to develop in the future and the impact that it might have on our society. As well as, so Kurzgesagt, it's this German YouTube channel. Of course, the videos are in English, but they basically do these super like cool / cute animations of just like how things work, everything from string theory through the economy and the stock market. Their goal is to explain any crazy, hard to grasp concepts in very simple terms. They have a ton about space, which is definitely one of my passions. So I really love Kurzgesagt. I'm not sure if you can link to it in the show notes, but would definitely recommend that for everyone. It's just general knowledge stuff, as well as like a blog, Wait But Why. That one has, everything on it. It's got a multi-part series on each of Elon Musk's ventures. It's got an article about why we procrastinate and how to try to avoid and control procrastination. It's got an entire series about human history as a whole. I really like consuming just general knowledge and learning as much as I can about everything. If you're looking to business stuff, there's all sorts of things, everything from channels about business credit cards to channels about how to finance things in different ways. There's not one in particular that I watch more than others. They just generally get suggested to me. Partially probably because I watch a lot of Bloomberg. I usually kind of have that going on in the background to see what's going on through the day. But yeah, I get my information from anywhere, but those are like 3 sources that I really like.
I think that's awesome. And I actually miscounted, but we have now 2 questions. So the second to last one is, what is one actionable piece of advice that the audience can take away that they can start implementing into their life today to either start taking action steps in business or for their own personal growth It could even be as simple as putting a calendar that counts down the days until they're 100 on their Google Chrome. It could be whatever it may be, But yeah, what's one thing that people can do to, again, just really help them on their personal development or in business that you think is just something that they can actionably take and do right now?
Do you have the Chrome extension Motivation? I'm pretty sure I installed it on your computer.
Yeah, I do.
So for those that might know in the audience, Motivation is this Chrome extension where you enter your birthday and it tells you exactly how old you are down to like 10 decimal places. And the first like 3 months that I had that, and I would open a new tab on Chrome and see my life ticking away before my eyes that was ridiculous. It caused so much stress. And let's say I was watching Netflix, it was late at night and I wasn't working. Like I'd open that tab to go somewhere else and do something, and I'd see that ticking away, and I'm like, shit, why am I not working right now? So that one's pretty awesome. I really would suggest anyone to have that. It really shows you how fast your life ticks away. Like seeing 1/100th of a year tick away every 3 days, and actually noticing like that number is much higher than the last time I actually looked at it. So yeah, Motivation Chrome extension is fun. In terms of other stuff, like if you ever notice like where's my time going, or you get that thought, I would highly recommend time tracking. There's an app called Toggle that I like a lot, Toggl. There's a whole bunch of different apps that'll do that for you, but the most important thing I think is to really figure out where you spend most of your time. That way you can see what you want to cut back on and what you want to do more of. That's a huge one, as well as like a calendar. So when I was heavy into the time tracking, I would like plot out blocks of my day. So I'm going to work for this block, and then I'm going to take lunch here, and then work for this block. Because having downtime is also really important without having too much of it. But yeah, those are the most important things. It's really about figuring out where you're spending too much time on things that you shouldn't be doing or don't want to do, and then reallocating that time to things that you do want to do. So I think that's the first step. That should be the first step in anyone's journey. Besides, of course, just figuring out what it is you actually want to do. But I think that's a much longer process, and I can't really tell anyone how to figure that out because I stumbled upon mine by accident.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer. So to wrap this up, what are some great ways for the audience to be able to get a hold of you if they want to learn more about, private acquisitions, or if they want to be able to maybe invest in your company? How can the audience get a hold of you?
Sure. So if you want to learn more about Alpha Route Capital, alpharoutecapital.com. And you can always shoot me an email there. It's just david@alpharoutecapital.com. If you find this interesting, want to chat more, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can probably find me on Facebook, but I don't really accept people there that I don't know. So yeah, definitely shoot me a message on LinkedIn or by email first. And I make myself known online. I'm relatively easy to get a hold of, even if I don't post on social media very much.
Awesome. Thanks, David. It was awesome having you on, and I appreciate you sharing your story and everything with us. So really, really glad to have you on and to be able to share everything.
Absolutely, Jordan. And thanks for the opportunity. Love talking to you, man.
Awesome. You as well. Take care, David. Hey there, hustlers. That's this week's episode of the Hustle Culture Podcast. Thank you again for listening, and don't forget to join us next week for another episode. If you're able to take away any bit of value from this episode and you want to support the channel, there are 3 things that you could do that would massively support me and the team that make all of this possible. The first one is to leave a review wherever you're listening to this podcast at. The second one would be to share it with a friend. And the third one would be to head over to jordanglickman.com, go to the resource tab, and I've compiled all of the best resources and tools that I use, from amassing as many credit card points as I have to structuring my day. I know it will be a great resource to most people listening. That's all for me today, and thank you again for tuning in to Hustle Culture.